Welcome to Faithledhealing with Tammy Trayer, Integrative Health Practitioner and Certified Breathworker. Tammy's passion is to help people take their life and health into their own hands so they can live their best life ever. Imagine having the energy to fulfill your dreams and create the life you desire. Rebalance your body by removing the stresses and toxicity and start healing. Listen as Tammy guides you along the healthy path with the Lord leading the way.
Thank you for joining the Faith-Led Healing Podcast. Consult your physician before starting any health regimen or protocol, especially if you are pregnant, breastfeeding, or if you have any unique or special medical conditions. The content of our podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to cure, treat, mitigate, or diagnose any medical condition or disease. Hey, my friends, welcome to the Faith-Led Healing Podcast. I am your host, Tammy Trayer, and I am here with my cohort, Austin Trayer.
Yep.
And we are here today to share his story. This is episode number 57, and we're going to title this My Life with Autism, and also what it looks like to overcome it. We will talk more. There'll be another episode following this next week. We will talk about the different protocols and things that we put in place that helped him get to where he is today. So this is probably going to be a back and forth kind of question answer, kind of lead into kind of conversation. But let me just give you a little bit of backstory. I had a very healthy pregnancy with Austin. And I enjoyed being pregnant. I love being pregnant. And he was born, healthy baby, no problems whatsoever. And in those first couple months following a vaccine, I started to notice some very significant changes. And
Didn't you have a problem with your hearing? Like your hearing popped when you had me?
Yeah, that was just a side effect of having labor. From pushing with what he's referring to is when I was delivering him, I was pushing really hard and something popped in my inner ear and has not quite been the same since. So, it was still a healthy pregnancy and still a healthy delivery. That's just kind of a normal, no, I shouldn't say normal, but something that can happen, and not exactly sure what happened, but that's another story. But Austin had a very tough early childhood because we didn't understand the things that were happening for him. It was all new for me. And at the time, Austin's 28 now. Mm-hmm. Going back 28 years, there wasn't a whole lot known about autism. There were certain doctors that knew a lot more than others and were familiar with autism. And but there wasn't a lot known about it. And that in and of itself made things tricky. But when he was in preschool, they noticed delays, and we had tried to get additional services that they recommended. And of course, at the time, that the thing that was stated to us was, don't call us, we'll call you. And I held off for a while. And when I did call, they had lost his records. So he missed out on some really good early intervention. And then in kindergarten, he was progressing, and there was some major delays. Really struggled in school in that setting just because of extreme overwhelm, overstimulation all the time. And we were just blessed with angels, one angel after the other. His kindergarten teacher suggested that we pushed him forward because that would give us the opportunity to get better analysis of where he's at and gaps in his learning. And she even schooled him during the summer to keep his progress and his that he would retain what he had learned. And I just was so blessed. Like there was teachers that would give me a hug and shove a piece of paper in my hand and tell me, here's some additional information that will be really helpful for you. And the school didn't want to get him diagnosed. I'm not really worried about a diagnosis, but at the time, I'm worried about what's going on with my son and how can I best help him? How can I help him to catapult him forward? What's going on? Kind of, you know, and I praise God and give him all the glory that I am a researcher, that I am, I'm motivated, and especially when it came to my children, and I wanted answers. So I'm relentless, and I kept pushing and I kept pushing, and we finally got him to a place where we could get him diagnosed, got him an IEP, which is an individualized education program, and found out that he was high functioning autistic and also had an auditory processing disorder, which we had initially thought was just selective hearing. However, that was not the case.
Yeah.
That was not the case. So that information really helped us, but it wasn't until he was 7 that we got that information and were able to really hone in. And at age between 7 and 9 was when we really started to be able to get connected with the right people. And you and I both believe that not only with God all things are possible. And you can show your mug. Look at this guy's mug. I love it. Look at that. I mean, that thing is like massive. I love his mug. The mountain man does not like his mug because it takes like a third of the pot, but I have no problem with it. I'm trying to find one for myself that size because mine's smaller compared to yours. Not a whole lot, but small
It
enough.
almost can fit into the...
Oh, yeah, just about. So, but that his mug, the reason he's showing the mug is that's exactly what it says. With God, all things are possible.
Yeah, it has my favorite verse on it.
Yeah, and that really, I mean, that was always his favorite verse, and it really, really resonated with his story.
I think I found this at Goodwill or something.
Yeah, thrift store. We love thrifting. So what was beautiful is that God just kept showing up in everything, and we're big believers also that everything happens for a reason, and that God's timing is best.
Yeah,
it's always shined through for us, always. And so, you know, with all of that being shared, I can speak into it more as to some of the things that Austin would experience, and we'll talk about protocols next week. But you know, what has your life been like? And what are some of your earliest memories of the struggles that you had?
It was kind of hectic at the same time. As I got older, it got easier, but let's see, what would be the best memory?
Well, and I guess one of the things with what you just said is because you started to learn things that you could put in place to help you combat that craziness and that overwhelming feeling.
Yeah, the beginning, I couldn't barely read a single book.
Yeah.
Everything was so difficult to understand.
Yeah. And just so overwhelming. Yeah. Well, and he says about reading books. When this man was a baby, picture a child, small child, in a crib, surrounded by all of those cardboard chunk books. This boy loved to read, and he still does. And, you know, so that was a significant thing. And I guess it's important to mention also that he was at a pre-primer reading level until he was in 3rd grade. And we'll just share that in 3rd grade, I was connected divinely through a friend that her children went to his school. She was working for a doctor locally who did have experience with autism, 25 years. And I was a single mom at the time and didn't have a lot of resources. So what I was doing was I bartered my web design services and created the doctor a website for his practice in exchange for hyperbaric oxygen therapy sessions for him. and we would both go in. It was once or twice a week. I think it was twice a week for a while, but it was 7 months that we did that. And he went from a pre-primer reading level in 3rd grade to a high 2nd grade reading level with hyperbaric oxygen therapy, which was just miraculous. The other thing that happened at the same time is we put you on the gluten-free and the dairy-free diet, which was extremely difficult at that time because there was nothing available, and what was tasted like cardboard. It was terrible.
Yeah, it was horrible. The cheese didn't taste like cheese.
Yeah, right. And he's a big cheese guy. So going off of that stuff, and we'll share more on that too, because that was a very big process and part of the journey for both of us. I spent a lot of time perfecting cooking and baking so that he wasn't feeling left out. And I was also doing it so that the mountain man couldn't tell the difference between gluten-free and regular, because that way I wasn't having to make 2 separate meals every night for dinner. So, but that was a very transitional and a very pivotal point in his life, because when we did the gluten-free and the dairy, I'm just going to share this little bit because next week we'll talk so much more about this part of it. Dairy, for a lot of the kids on the spectrum, for starters, gut issues do play a role. And dairy for him was like giving him LSD. Like he was just on such an emotional roller coaster ride, and it just disturbed him. And he's got such a big heart. So it bothered him so greatly when he would have these just total off the wall outbursts that he couldn't control.
Yeah, I would throw desks across the room at school.
Yeah.
When I get pissed off.
Yeah, you threw a pencil and a desk across the room. It was quite, and here's the thing, that was as a result of being given things that he wasn't supposed to have in another setting. So
but I willingly took them because I was tired of free stuff.
Right.
It wasn't as good.
And his principal was downstairs at the other end of the school, and he was upstairs at the other end of the school, and she could hear him. So they weren't just light outbursts, and they were outbursts that he just couldn't control because of what the dairy was doing in his system. It also did cause his the sensation of his bowels to be lost, which was also a very difficult time and thing for you as well, because that could be very embarrassing, especially in a school setting. So
I definitely had that happen at school.
Yeah, and not fun. Kids, kids will, that was just not.
I was surprised I didn't realize I did it.
You got very lucky. That's another way that God had his hand on you, because kids would have just had a field day with that. You know that as well as I do. So, and there were times where we'd be in the grocery store and just a simple no would just trigger him. And when he was triggered, and especially when there was dairy involved, there was just no controlling that whatsoever. And so going back to the hyperbaric oxygen, this is one of the other significant things that happened. You could not talk in full sentences at that time. I would get one-word answers from you. I did not know what was going on or what he was struggling most with, because he couldn't communicate that with me. And we were driving over to go for one of our hyperbaric oxygen therapies, and he says to me, I feel so much better doing all of this. My stomach doesn't hurt as much. And I just stopped the car, because I was like, excuse me, did you just say that? I couldn't, that was the most he'd said to me. I just sat there and cried, because you were finally able to speak in sentences, to express yourself. And that's when we found out and, really honed in on the gut issues that he was having as well. But that was a very, very pivotal point in your life. And so to go from, pretty much nonverbal and unable to read to this absolutely astounding growth in just 7 months. And things just continued to progress from there. And we did a lot of different natural therapies. And so you struggled with change. Change was a big component.
I hated change.
If you'd get to school, I know there were times when you'd get to school and there would be like there'd be an assembly that wasn't announced. And that would just set you off. And we're very fortunate that the schools understood our circumstance, understood that there was a circumstance in another environment that was totally out of our hands with your other family. So they knew that he'd come back every other weekend and there would be a great struggle and a great upheaval for the first 3 days, because it takes at least 3 days to get dairy out of the system. So that was one of the incidents with the desk and the pencil being thrown. And what they would do is they would call me, and they knew that I would talk him off the ledge and that I would talk him out of that situation and calm him, that he could go back to doing what he needed to do. And so we had a really good protocol in place, and every teacher he had up until we homeschooled really worked wonderful with us and understood our circumstances. So it was just such a blessing in that regard. And we always seemed to get the services that we needed. We would ask. I've seen situations where parents would get like totally irate, demanding things. And I would just, I'd come there with my heart in my hands. I wanted a good life for him. I wanted him to overcome. And that took a team. It wasn't just me. And it took us all working together. And we were so blessed in that way. And, there were times that he'd just have a meltdown, and I didn't do this in the grocery store, but I did do it at home, where I would just bear hug him from behind, and I would wrap my feet around the front of his feet and my arms around him, and I would just sit us down in Indian style, and there we would sit. That tightness, just that tension on his body was very calming to him. So, there was a lot of stuff going on, a lot of, trial and error. There was a lot of patience, required a lot of patience, patience. But, you not liking change, we really blew that out of the water when we embarked on our journey. First, with your dad opening up his blacksmith shop. Do you remember that?
Kind of.
Okay. Well, it was this time in his life where everything was just very unknown, because we were helping my husband to open up his blacksmith shop and get everything in order. So every day was different. There was no schedule. And, he'd struggle. He didn't like the feeling of putting socks on if they weren't right. That was, and if the change in schedule, like it was just so many things. And all of a sudden I'm like, hey, this is exciting. Grab your book, grab something you want to do for the day and play with, and let's go. And there became an exciting side to that, I think, that drew you.
It took a while for me to want to do it. I wanted to stick with a schedule, do everything that way.
Regimented, yeah. So then, we really threw you off with that. And then we embarked on our off-grid journey and moved out here. And that was, this was so cool. We were driving cross country, and, I didn't do a lot with video games and eye jiggers and all that stuff with him. I tried to really keep him like there was a time where I stuck him in our pond in a boat with a packed lunch and his books and his fishing rod. And he went out in the pond. Not that I wasn't there, but I gave him the freedom to do those kind of things. And we'd go for walks, and we were always outside. And it was just, I knew that was good for him. So, we were always doing those things. Well, we moved out here, and coming across country, we packed all these things that he'd have: puzzles, license plate games that you could, track which states you found, and just stuff like that. And he did have a little game that he could play. And he also had a mini DVD that he could watch movies on the way out. And he watched them for a couple hours into our 36-hour ride that ended up being like a week, because we had
watched pretty much all the movies on the way.
But then he stopped. He was so fascinated with the scenery and the different things, and he was excited about the journey. And I'll never forget that you just were just like so in tune. And then we got out here, and we lived in a canvas wall tent for 8.5 months while we built our home on raw land. And on the Mountain Woman Radio podcast this week, we're going to talk about homesteading and off-grid living with the special needs children, because it's really important that you think of some of the things. But here's the important thing about this whole conversation today. This man sitting in front of me has overcome like 98.9% of his autism tendencies and struggles. The only thing that's hanging on that I'm going to share, which is out of fun, you know where I'm going, don't
No,
you?
I don't.
Oh no, he's just scared. Is his literal mind. And I'll give you an example. We went to a thrift store the other week, and I knew he would think this. I wasn't making fun of him, but I saw it, and then I shared it with him, and I knew instantly what he was going to think. It said videos, movies, secondhand soap. And I looked at him, and he made the face, and we just both started laughing, because the way his mind works, it was secondhand soap. And it's like, why would you want secondhand soap? So it was real. Ooh, I hit my mic again. It was really fun. It was really funny. We have those moments. So he has a very literal mind, and things that we would take one way, he takes completely different. So we've had so many moments at our dinner table when we're traveling of just those funny moments of his perspective or mindset on some of those things, and just how he receives some of that. So, but beyond that, I mean, you have overcome so much. You overcame the anxiety. You overcame the overstimulation. We did have the opportunity and blessing to homeschool him once we got here in Idaho, part because it was always a dream, but I have been home-based and with my home-based businesses since 1997. He was born in 1996. So I was always afraid I'd rob him of his education if I did that, because I couldn't be present enough. And he thrived. He thrived big time. There were pros and cons to homeschooling. So you want to share that?
The lack of friends and them being so far away.
Yeah, because we live remotely, and
I forget how many miles they are from here.
Yeah, it varies depending who it is. So that
like over 6 miles.
Yeah. Yes. And they were homeschooling, and they were busy. They had busy lives. So you got together with friends periodically, but it's not like you were around friends every day. So there
was a few times where it was like 2 years before I saw them again.
Oh no, you'd see them other places, but just
no. When I didn't have a job, I didn't see them.
Oh, well, and then you have that situation where they've grown up, they've gotten jobs, that's life. So,
yeah.
And so that aspect is life. So here's the thing: if you're planning to homeschool and you're living remotely, make sure you have a full quiver of children that they can entertain each other, because that would have made the world of difference for you. But it also helped you to become a little more independent in some ways, now even more so. But what was the benefit, though, of you homeschooling compared to what it was like for you in the school?
It was less stressful. I could focus on my work.
Yeah. And he actually did 2 school years in one. The first and second year that you homeschooled, because he was just able to focus and thrive. And one of those years was in a tent while we were schooling. That was funny. But we had mud up to our eyeballs, and we're having a heck of a time getting in and out of here. And the school bus stop was like at 5 o'clock or 5:30 in the morning. Like, it was really crazy early. And and it was also, things were freezing as well. And our water froze, and we couldn't get showers regularly. So it was like, we didn't want to be sending him to school in that regard. And so it just worked out. We just started homeschooling and never looked back. So that was really awesome. Plus, you also went to college. So share a little bit about that journey. Where did you start? Because that was your initial desire.
First, I started off at Job Corps.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. And
that was the first college, like, thing.
Yeah. And honestly, we wouldn't recommend that for
No.
it was created with a good purpose, but it's not being followed in that regard anymore. It's not a good setting. It wasn't a good setting. So he wasn't there very long, and we were thankful to get him out of there right before COVID started. So then you embarked on your next journey.
That one was to Moody Aviation.
Yeah. And what were you going to do there?
I was going to work on planes. That was my plan.
And then also fly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I didn't have enough knowledge to get past the work, like the class stuff.
Well, and here's the thing with Moody. Moody was a very hardcore, very fast-paced, very in-depth classes, and you did do well. They were looking at some other. This was kind of unusual, but they were looking at some other courses at a community college that would have helped him progress some. And when he went with the dean, even took him there. And when they went there, he found out that they had
an automotive course.
An automotive course, which just kind of blew him out of the water. So he ended up switching and going to the community college for automotive.
Yeah, and I was going pretty far into it. I was getting into the electrical part, and then I threw out my pack.
Yeah.
And then I couldn't take on that class, so I had to quit and head back home.
Well, and part of that was we would have still made that work and been able to make that work, but COVID set in, and the pricing on apartments in Spokane, Washington got so outrageous. And
it was over $1,000 a month.
Yeah, just for like a efficiency apartment, and there weren't any good stand-up individuals that could share that rent with him, and even 2 people, that's a lot of money when you're going to school. So yeah,
you would need like 4 or 5 people just to afford that kind of rent.
Yeah, when you're schooling the way you were. And then
because I didn't have time to go to work.
Yeah.
And I couldn't make money that way.
Yeah, they were very fast-paced courses with a lot of extra work involved. So it was an amazing journey for you, though. You met new people, you got connected, you came out of your shell in a really great way. And he was also excited to get out and off of the homestead because he couldn't wait to get to the city. But how did that work for you?
I actually did like it.
Yeah.
It was pretty fun because there was a little park right near the place that I was staying at that I could play basketball. So we played basketball a few times a week.
And there was volleyball and stuff like that too. And you guys did Bible studies and different things like that too within the house you were staying in. Yeah, so there was a lot of things you could get involved in that were close in that. But did you start to have that hankering for the woods again and that desire?
Not really.
Not yet.
No.
But when you got back here, you were thankful.
Yeah. I would have liked to stay up there longer and learned about that automotive, but it just didn't work out the way.
Yeah.
It got too expensive to stay up there.
Yeah. So now, in some ways, you're apprenticing here with the varying things that go on. And you always have been. You have been a hands-on from the get-go for the last 15 years, doing all the traditional things that we do. So you've learned a lot of skills and have a lot under your belt in that regard.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it helps with your dad being a MacGyver type. And
yeah.
Yeah. Well, do you remember what what you made in metal shop? We called it metal shop when you were homeschooling. So what was your day spent with your dad? Do you remember what you made?
I made a few different things.
Okay, so I'm thinking of the sword.
Yeah, that was pretty fun.
Yeah. So you were blacksmithing, you were learning how to weld.
Yep.
And you've made knives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also made some wood things out of wood.
Okay, right. Right. Yeah, so you've had a pretty full life and everything. So this is an interesting concept that we should talk about too. One of the ways that we found that you progressed well was when we pushed you out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And made you take steps that you wouldn't naturally take on your own.
Yeah.
So some people thought that we were really cruel when we created his treehouse, because, well, why don't you tell this story?
It wasn't exactly a tree house. It was a stilt house.
Okay, and why did we make it?
So that I forget.
Well, what did you overcome?
Heights.
Yes. So he was afraid of heights.
More of falling than the height part.
Okay, all right. Well, the stilted treehouse was built that the only way to get in it was with a ladder. And although that may sound really cruel, about a year or two later, you ended up helping your dad do roofing.
Yeah.
And overcame that fear.
I did a lot of roofing with him.
Yeah.
Some of them were really high up.
Right. And, there is definitely the need to be cautious when you're a child. But are you grateful that you had those opportunities?
Yeah.
Have those opportunities of pushing you out of your comfort zone affected you in ways now as an adult that you find it's not so difficult to push yourself out of your comfort zone?
Yeah.
You find that you do it more on your own now without needing to be pushed?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why don't you share what you were doing this summer as far as going out of his comfort zone?
I forget what I was doing.
Where did I retrieve you from when we were down in Alabama? What were you doing that day?
Oh, going down the river?
Yes. Well,
walking down, I don't remember how many miles I walked.
Yeah, I don't know either that day. It was quite something.
I spent most of the day out walking that river.
I almost didn't think I was going to be able to retrieve him. And he got really lucky because when I got to where I was following him on a GPS, he was thinking that he'd be able to walk the entire river back to a bridge. He made it about halfway, and it was a very long haul, and it was a very windy river. And I get to where the best spot I could see to gather him and pick him up, and it was a complete vertical drop down into this really deep valley. And by the grace of God, there was a small four-wheeler trail that came up and winded up around the mountain that led to a gate. So he got lucky that day. But
yeah,
what were you?
I had to climb over the gate to get over to you.
Yeah. And, going out of his comfort zone, I asked that because he's out there with water moccasins, copperheads, rattlesnakes, and he's just going through the river like, I don't know that I would have been doing it.
I did see that snake the one time.
Yeah.
Just its tail, though.
Yeah. Well,
pretty sure it was a water moccasin.
Yeah, and water moccasins are very aggressive. They're not the kind of snake that's just going to go the other direction. They'll come after you, and of course they're poisonous. So, but he was down there. What were you looking for?
Bottles.
Why?
Because I just started liking them.
Okay, so what would you consider yourself?
A bottle hunter, I guess.
Okay. So Austin also enjoys collecting coins, and I want to just take this moment to share some of his superpowers. And I believe that we all have superpowers, but his are quite super. And I noticed it when he was young, when we first got here and we had chickens. I believe he could have told me how many spots were on the back of one of our spotted chickens. Like, he has such an attention to detail. It's so funny. It was always so funny to me. He'd notice things, like he'd come in and share things with me about the animals that were things that nobody would have ever noticed otherwise. And that was one of my first clue-ins. But now as an adult, as he is coin hunting and collecting coins from all over the world, not only does he have an attention for detail and that he just hones in on such incredible detail, but the memory of this man blows me away. Like, you ask him about coins, and I'm telling you, he doesn't have to look it up. It's just in there. It's so amazing. He does this research and he retains it. And that has been really, really amazing. So what is your oldest coin that you have collected?
I think from 700 BC.
Okay. Yeah, I'm thinking that's what I was thinking too, was that one.
Mm-hmm.
But
I think it's a Chinese coin.
okay. Okay. But yeah, he's got coins from all over the globe. People are often giving him coinage because they know he's looking for it. So, he's got some really neat hobbies. He loves being in the outdoors. You do a lot of really cool stuff. And one of the things that, has been part of your journey is not only coming out of your shell, out of that autism shell. When we got here, you finally had the opportunity to be who you were. Being in school was very confining for you and very overwhelming for you. And because of that, being in school for so many hours, you'd come home and it would take you so long to unwind. And then you'd start all over again. Where out here, you had the opportunity in our wilderness playground to just start to come out of that and mature into yourself, take life at a different pace. So do you feel that this was a huge part of your journey and overcoming and being able to kind of find yourself?
Yeah.
And this was a longer show. We could probably break this up and have some other shows. And for those of you that are watching that do have autistic children, or that are on the spectrum, that have Asperger's, and you have questions for him, that's one of your passions, is being able to help people, just like I have that passion. Is you've always been very open with your journey to be able to help others. So if you guys have questions, please reach out to us at podcast@faithledhealing.com for either one of us. And like I said, next week we'll cover the protocols we've put in place. But you've had an amazing journey. You went from, and let me just say this too. I am so proud of the man you have become. It's my turn. I'm so proud of the man that you become, and also just how you handled your journey from little on up. You've always been that happy-go-lucky, even though you had those outbursts and those outbreaks and life was really overwhelming. And this was part of your saving grace a lot of the time, was that he has a very good sense of humor. But you've always viewed life very different than others. And I was just always proud of you, and also very thankful for the relationship you and I have, and the ability to be able to talk about anything. That was something that was very valuable as a teenager and just growing up. And I think, how was that for you to have somebody that you can come to and talk to about anything? Because we talk about anything.
That's pretty nice.
Yeah. It's a comfort, because not everybody has that. And I'm just very grateful for that with you. I think that's what has made our chemistry the way it is that we've had this long journey of the need to be very close and interconnected so that we could get you to where you are today. And I'm just very thankful that God made me a relentless researcher and a relentless, I don't want to say fighter, but that I strove forward in a way to get you the things that you needed. And because it was just amazing how God showed up in it all. And I can't take any of that credit. I'm giving God all the glory, but it's been really neat watching you grow and mature. And one thing I do want to mention before we end the podcast is, for those of you that do have children on the spectrum, I want to encourage you to dig deeper into your child, because there were so many times where we would be in conflict just because of his overwhelm and me trying to calm him, and just those kind of stressful moments. But dig a little deeper, because there was always disconnects. I could always see disconnects, and I was always thankful I could see that. And I think that's part of the intuitiveness that God's given me, to see that you were disconnecting and not understanding what I was putting down. And because of that, I kept digging deeper to understand you. So understand that, our children in general, but especially those on the spectrum, are not intentionally behaving the way they are. There is a purpose for it, and we will talk about that next week. So get to know your children. Keep asking questions, because that was also something that was really funny with you. If I didn't ask the right question, I obviously didn't get the answer I was looking for. You have to dig deep. You have to dig deep and keep asking. And the more you ask, the more depth you'll get into where they are, how they're thinking, how they're understanding. And, as always in any relationship, the enemy plays a role in creating conflict. So, demand him out of the scene right off the bat. But that was something that was really helpful to me, was understanding that he wasn't being, let's just use the word ignorant at any time. He was just struggling and wasn't able to communicate necessarily, even though he could speak in sentences, what and how he was feeling. And I think that also, although I probably annoyed the fire out of you, but that's what made our relationship what it is today.
Yeah.
Is just that deep. And we know our children better than anybody else. So don't let anybody tell you otherwise, and just keep connected, keep digging. That's my take. Now, why don't we end this today on you sharing, what your journey has felt like to you in all those progressions, and also leave some lasting words for those that are listening as to where they can go in their journey too. So go ahead.
So at the start, it was kind of felt claustrophobic. And then as it went along, it felt less. Till now, it doesn't really feel it at all.
Yeah, so you don't even feel those pressures anymore.
No.
And again, last week, I forget what we were talking about, but you mentioned how you were able to overcome things. Oh, I know what it was. It was when, because of my life-changing experience where I didn't almost have tomorrow, you are now living out of that space too. So you created a new habit of living out of a specific mindset. So all of these things, in your journey, wouldn't you say that a lot of your overcoming was because you just kept striving for better, and you kept trying to overcome?
Yeah.
And putting new habits in place in that. And of course, I'm going to ask you this too. Everybody knows that I wear my faith on my sleeve, but do you feel that God played a big role in your journey and for you personally? I mean, we saw it in the angels that came our way, but explain that to our audience. What did it feel like for you? Could you feel God's presence in it all?
Yeah.
Can you build?
It felt like I was being warmed up from the inside.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Okay, that's a good explanation. He was just constantly working, constantly nurturing you. That's pretty cool. So what would you say to those that are watching that are on the spectrum? What kind of words of encouragement would you give them?
To keep on striving forward, not looking back at what happened a long time ago.
Okay. And what would you say to their parents or caregivers?
To keep on fighting, not give up. Keep them in their mind at all times.
Very nice. Very nice. Good advice. Good advice. And we're going to talk more about this today. It was kind of a little bit all over the place, but
kind of. I think it was.
It was all over the place. He's got lots of layers, and we may do more on this. This was off the cuff, and next week we're going to share the protocols that I put in place and helped him with, but also some of the things that he did for himself to help him and support him in this journey. And I want to give you all encouragement too. Listen in next week, because I truly believe that God has given us everything we need in our surroundings and through people, that we can overcome anything. And the reason we can is because God's in it all. And if we're staying connected with God and we're honing in and pulling into God, He's the miracle worker.
Mm-hmm.
So don't lose hope, don't lose sight, regardless what it is you're dealing with. And never stop praying and seeking God, because He's a walking testament to being able to overcome autism. And I believe that is a real reality for many. So thank you for your raw and real, and we'll dive next week into all the supplementation and varying things we did.
Mm-hmm.
But join us on Mount Woman Radio. We're going to talk about homesteading and off-grid living with a special needs child, because I know many of you are trying to accomplish that as well. So we'll join you there. Take care. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you next week. God bless.
Thank you for joining us on Faith-Led Healing, where every day is one step closer to your best life ever. We hope you enjoyed the show and encourage you to join us at faithledhealing.com. Connect with us on your favorite podcast app and be sure to leave us a review. Remember, your best life is just down the path, the Faith-Led Healing path.